যাও 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 তোমরা দেখো না
এই হালার এই ভাই
It's just after sunrise in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia's coastal powerhouse, a city packed with 5 million people, glittering high-rises, and some of the busiest roads in the Middle East. Overnight, everything was calm. But within minutes, an unimaginable scene unfolds. A wall of rain slams into the city with explosive force. Storm drains overflow instantly. Water surges across highways like a tidal wave. And before anyone understands what's happening, entire neighborhoods are swallowed under 2 to 3 feet of fast-moving floodwater. Cars begin floating and crashing into each other, like they weigh nothing. People are forced to swim through intersections just to survive. Families wake up to water, pouring under their doors, sweeping across their living rooms in seconds. Power grids fail. Airports shut down. Major highways disappear beneath a swirling brown sea. By the time emergency sirens echo across the city, it's already too late. Jeddah is drowning. Mecca and Medina are falling next. And a historic mega-flood is rewriting the map of western Saudi Arabia. On December 9th, 2025, one of the most extreme flash flood disasters in the region's modern history struck without mercy, paralyzing 3 major cities, triggering massive rescues and exposing how vulnerable even the strongest urban centers can be when the sky opens. This is the story of the day a powerful storm turned a modern metropolis into an ocean, and why experts warn it could happen again. In the days leading up to December 9th, 2025, meteorologists across Saudi Arabia watched an unusual weather system brewing over the Red Sea, slow-moving, moisture-packed, and unstable in a way that immediately raised concern. Beginning around December 6th, satellite imagery revealed thick clusters of storm cells repeatedly forming and regenerating offshore. The Saudi National Center for Meteorology issued early advisories, warning of heavy thunderstorms, hail, and wind gusts reaching 50-60 mph. But the full danger wasn't yet clear. What made this system different was its sheer intensity. Warm sea temperatures feeding relentless moisture into the atmosphere pressure patterns, holding storm bands in place, and a direct path aimed at the most densely populated cities in western Saudi Arabia. As December 8th unfolded, radar screens lit up with deep red echoes, signaling rain bands far stronger than typical seasonal storms. Still, for many residents, life continued as usual. After all, Jeddah and Mecca had seen heavy rain before. But beneath the surface, the conditions were quietly aligning for catastrophe. Narrow wadi channels normally dry were primed to overflow. Low-lying districts, some sitting just above sea level, were vulnerable to rapid flooding. And a long-criticized drainage system designed for brief showers, not high-volume rainfall, was never meant to face a storm of this magnitude. By the early hours of December 9th, the entire atmosphere seemed ready to snap. Humidity surged, cloud tops soared, and the sky over Jeddah darkened into a dense electric gray. What residents thought would be another routine rainstorm was, in reality, the final calm before a flood storm capable of bringing one of the Middle East's most advanced cities to its knees. When the storm finally unleashed its full force over Jeddah on the morning of December 9th, it struck with almost no transition, no gradual buildup, no warning that residents could truly feel. One moment there was heavy rain. The next, there was chaos. Multiple inches of rain fell in an incredibly short span, bombarding streets, rooftops, and highways with a relentless wall of water. Within minutes, drainage canals overflowed. Sewer lids rattled and burst open. Water surged across intersections with the strength of a river breaking through a dam. Floodwaters rose 2 to 3 feet with terrifying speed, filling streets like giant basins. Cars bobbed in the current, smashing into light poles, storefronts, and each other as if gravity no longer applied. Drivers abandoned their vehicles mid-traffic, climbing onto hoods or wading through chest-deep water in a desperate attempt to reach higher ground. Videos captured people swimming across intersections, clutching bags, children or whatever belongings they could carry above the rising brown flood. Inside homes, the disaster unfolded just as quickly. Water poured under doors and through broken windows, sliding across floors and lifting furniture like driftwood. Electrical systems shorted out. Appliances sparked. Entire rooms disappeared beneath swirling muddy water before families could salvage more than a handful of items. For many households, there was no chance to prepare, no time to stack belongings, move cars, or even escape their homes before the flood took control. Block by block, Jeddah transformed into a submerged maze, an urban landscape drowned beneath a fast-moving inland sea. The city's infrastructure wasn't just strained. It was overwhelmed, collapsing under an event far more powerful than anyone had anticipated. In less than an hour, Jeddah, a city of global commerce, tourism, and modern development, had become unrecognizable, swallowed by one of the most sudden and destructive flash floods in its modern history. While Jeddah was fighting to stay afloat, the storm system swept inland with unstoppable force, slamming directly into Mecca and Medina cities that rarely see flooding of this scale. In Mecca, the rainfall intensified so suddenly that major access roads leading to the Grand Mosque were swallowed under 2 feet of swirling floodwater within minutes. Traffic froze in place as water surged between rows of vehicles, rising high enough to cover tires and then hoods. Pilgrims and residents trapped inside their cars were forced to climb onto guardrails or rooftop ledges, stunned as the streets around them transformed into violent, fast-moving streams. Along the city's narrow corridors, water rushed downhill from surrounding hills and wadis, funneling into lower districts with devastating speed. Entire streets disappeared beneath moving water, thick with mud tree branches, broken signs, and debris ripped from marketplaces. Emergency vehicles attempting rescues found themselves boxed in by stalled cars, floating barriers, and flooded underpasses that had become deep pools. In Medina, the chaos took on a different character, one shaped by severe thunderstorms and bursts of hail that hammered rooftops like stones. Visibility dropped to just a few feet as lightning illuminated flooded roadways in strobe-like flashes. Cars hydroplaned out of control or stalled the moment water reached their engines. Some vehicles were pushed sideways by currents strong enough to drag small sedans across lanes. Bus routes were halted. Neighborhoods on the city's lower edges found themselves isolated as water rushed through streets not designed to handle this level of runoff. Inside homes across both cities, families scrambled to move belongings to higher shelves as water seeped above floor level, rising inch by inch until entire rooms were submerged. Many residents had no choice but to retreat to second floors or rooftops, signaling rescue workers through windows or with flashlights as the storm raged on. For Mecca and Medina, this wasn't just heavy rain. It was a complete breakdown of urban life. Streets, homes, mosques, shops, and transit systems all froze under a sudden flood event, powerful enough to halt movement, sever communication, and leave millions of people confronting a disaster they never imagined would reach them. In a single day, two of the most historically and spiritually important cities in the world found themselves trapped underwater, paralyzed by a storm unlike anything they had seen in years. As the floodwaters spread across Jeddah, Mecca, and Medina, the region's transportation network, normally responsible for moving millions of people each day, buckled under the weight of the disaster and ultimately failed. The first major blow struck at King Abdulaziz International Airport in Jeddah. Within a short window, several inches of standing water covered runways, grounding aircraft, and forcing flight crews to shut down operations. Taxiways vanished beneath muddy water. Shuttle buses stalled before reaching the terminal. Passengers watched through terminal windows as luggage carts floated and emergency vehicles struggled to navigate waterlogged service roads. Inside the airport, departure boards quickly filled with red alerts: delayed, cancelled, cancelled, cancelled. For hours, no one was going anywhere. Highways across the region collapsed next. The main expressways linking Jeddah, Mecca, and Medina transformed into unpredictable waterways with 2 to 3 feet of floodwater sweeping across multiple lanes. Cars stalled mid-traffic choke points, formed at every exit, and long lines of vehicles stood frozen as water climbed above door handles. Some drivers were forced to abandon their cars and wade through chest-deep water to reach safety. Others remained trapped, signaling to rescue crews through rain-soaked windshields as currents pulled debris dumpsters and broken barriers across the road. In some sections of highway, the destruction went beyond flooding entire stretches of pavement, cracked, buckled, and collapsed. Fast-moving water carved deep channels into the asphalt, exposing soil beneath the road surface and creating sinkholes large enough to swallow vehicles. Bridges and underpasses turned into dangerous reservoirs as choking runoff filled them faster than drainage pipes could relieve the pressure. Every route that should have served as a lifeline instead became a hazard. Public transportation suffered catastrophic failure. Bus routes in all 3 cities were suspended as drivers confronted inundated lanes, collapsing road shoulders, and intersections buried under thick mud. In Jeddah, the rail system, normally a backbone for daily commuters, shut down entirely after stations' tracks and electrical control rooms were overtaken by floodwater. Trains stood motionless in dim tunnels and at half-submerged platforms, leaving passengers stranded miles from home with no way to move through the city. By the afternoon, Western Saudi Arabia faced something almost unimaginable: a complete standstill of mobility. Thousands of people were stuck where they stood at airports, inside vehicles in transit stations, or on flooded streets cut off from help, just as they needed it most. Movement became impossible, and the region plunged deeper into crisis. As transportation systems collapsed and floodwaters continued rising, rescue operations intensified into one of the largest emergency mobilizations the region had seen in years. Civil defense teams deployed high-clearance trucks, inflatable rescue boats, and rapid response units to navigate streets engulfed by waist-deep water. Their mission reached the countless residents trapped inside homes where water had surged upward so quickly that escape routes vanished almost instantly. First responders pushed through powerful currents, carrying debris, shattered signboards, and pieces of broken asphalt as they fought to reach families calling for help from darkened, water-filled homes. Evacuations unfolded, minute by minute. In some neighborhoods, rescue crews smashed car windows to pull out drivers whose vehicles were filling with water. In others, firefighters lifted children onto their shoulders as parents followed through knee-deep mud, to reach safer ground. Elderly residents, many unable to climb stairs or navigate the rushing flood, were carried from living rooms where water was already reaching 2 to 3 feet. Some families climbed onto rooftops to escape rising water, waving flashlights and calling down to rescue teams navigating the submerged streets below. The storm revealed not only destruction, but also remarkable human resilience. Volunteers from across the region stepped forward with whatever they had: pickup trucks, ropes, food blankets, and the sheer determination to help strangers. Groups of young men formed human chains in rushing water to guide residents across dangerous intersections. Off-road drivers used their vehicles to reach stranded motorists stuck in deep water. Neighborhoods organized makeshift shelters where families shared dry clothes, flashlights, and warm drinks to comfort those who had lost everything. At local clinics, doctors and nurses treated injuries ranging from lacerations caused by shattered glass to sprains, bruises, and mild hypothermia from prolonged exposure to cold water. But even amid these heroic efforts, the emotional toll was impossible to ignore. Parents clutched their children tightly as they evacuated homes filled with floating furniture. Business owners watched helplessly as muddy water swallowed their shops. Residents stood in disbelief outside what was left of their homes, holding soaked documents, ruined appliances, and items that mere hours earlier had defined their lives. For thousands, the storm became more than a natural disaster. It became a moment of reckoning, a reminder of how vulnerable even the strongest communities can be when nature unleashes its full force. In the end, this was a night defined not only by fear and destruction, but by extraordinary acts of courage, solidarity, and humanity. A night when survival depended on both the bravery of rescuers and the unwavering unity of the people standing beside them. As the storm clouds finally drifted away and the floodwaters began to retreat, what remained across Jeddah, Mecca, and Medina was more than destruction. It was a sobering reminder of how fragile modern cities truly are. Streets once filled with life were now lined with debris. Cars lay overturned or stacked against walls. Homes carried watermarks several feet high, like scars etched into concrete. Families returned to neighborhoods that no longer looked like the places they had lived in for years. And everywhere you looked, people were asking the same question: how did this happen so fast? This disaster exposed a critical truth: extreme weather is no longer a distant threat. It is here now, reshaping landscapes, overwhelming infrastructure, and forcing nations to confront new realities. Saudi Arabia will rebuild, but the emotional toll, the financial losses, and the long-lasting insecurity left behind by this mega flood will echo for years. And the warning isn't just for the Middle East. Cities across the world, from Houston to Miami to Los Angeles, are facing the same rising risks as storms grow stronger and faster than ever before. If videos like this help you understand the power of these events and the importance of preparing for them, please hit like, share this video, and subscribe for more deep dive coverage of extreme weather from around the world. Your support helps us continue bringing these real human stories to light. And now, we want to hear from you. Do you think major U.S. cities are truly prepared for a sudden, fast-moving flash flood, like the one that hit Jeddah? Which city do you believe is most at risk, and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice shapes the conversations we explore next.